Um, I, we got to do that one. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. Uh, we've had a few meetings already. Hopefully, everybody's gotten something out of it, maybe even a couple of different things. Tonight, we're going to move to the U14 level. Um, and there's some rather bigger changes at the U14 than there is from the U12s. I just wanted to outline a couple of the rules to make sure that um, we're all on the same page. As far as slalom, there is really no rule for length or radius. It's up to the right size for the athlete. And we've heard about that anywhere from their chin to their forehead. In GS, the only rule on GS ski is for a minimum of the 17-meter radius. So that gets into the large end of a junior ski into the tweener skis. And then in Super G, it's the same thing. It's only a 17-meter radius. And as we saw in some of the earlier programs, length does matter. And when you're picking up speed, as we do in Super G, um, the stability of a longer ski really does help. Their helmets, they need to be a FIS approved helmet. Hard ear FIS approved helmet has to have a sticker on it. They're going to need shin guards for slalom. Pretty much goes without saying. Um, Boots, I think we're kind of beating the boots the past few weeks with how important it is that the heel stays placed, that the flex point matches the ankle, lower leg is in the center of the upper cuff, um, and lifters on the clog of the boot, which allows for playing with a little bit of canting. When they have that lifter in there, you can pull out a screw or two, put in a little shim to work on the canting. And as we've seen, that's pretty important. And it also gives you the chance to remove the canting as the athlete's physical size changes. And that's something we really didn't cover a whole lot was, don't be afraid to remove it and see what happens. And if it's better without it, then go with it. And then the last thing I just really want to strongly recommend is cut resistant clothing, cut resistant underlayers. Um, we're seeing a lot more kids, parents using the mechanical tuners, getting some super, super sharp skis. Skis still do fall off at times if you're not on top of the ski, and cuts are happening. So the $500 it costs for a pair of long underwear versus the thousands of dollars and nights in the hospital. I think it's a good direction to go. So if you can strongly urge your families to consider cut resistant underwear anywhere from the Vicks all the way down to the POC, um, anything's better than nothing. So that's my little play on that. I think tonight should be pretty good. We do have everybody had some homework. I hope that you all did your homework, watched the videos, possibly came up with a drill and a progression and a time frame. We are going to talk about that tonight. Um, and questions, throw the questions in the chat. We'll try to answer the questions in the chat as we can or bring it up to the panel. And just a reminder that you do need to self-report this. We are not reporting for your credits to US Ski and Snowboard. You'll need to self-report once you have become active in the sport education department. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it to Marissa. She's in charge of running the video tonight. Hopefully, we've worked out the bugs on the buffering and the choppiness of the videos. And let's get going. Marissa, it's yours. You're muted.
Okay, I'm sharing. Okay, so we shared a couple videos. I'm gonna play this first video and I'm gonna let it run on regular speed a couple of times over. It's just gonna keep looping and then I will slow it down to quarter speed just so that if you didn't get a chance to see the video or you looked at it a couple days ago, you get a chance to look at it again, and then we'll start chatting about it. And as you're looking at it, just kind of thinking about refreshing sort of what are our goals here, right? We're building through the age group. So in a perfect world, all of the things that we started talking about with our U10s, with their fore-aft balance, rolling the skis on edge, using that ankle laterally, starting to build outside pressure with our U12s, like in a perfect world, all of those things have magically happened and now we've moved on. But I think we all recognize, and I think this is the challenge as coaches working with athletes over the course of the season, we're going to get the mixed bag as U14s. We're going to have kids that have mastered those skills and are ready to take it to the next step. We're going to also have kids that have not mastered those skills yet, and they're going to need to continue to develop those skills that we had hoped they would have achieved at a younger age before they're really going to be able to make it to that next stage.
All right, so Mr. Walker, what do you see going on here? Give us the good.
Well, I guess there's a couple things. I think just first watching the video, one of the first things that I notice is that there's a bit of leaning in happening. And so I think the first thing, again, kind of looking at this and looking at this athlete leaning in and try and figure out why they're leaning in. And so if we move down to their feet, and as this video plays through, and you look at their feet, there's a pretty close stance with this athlete. So I think before we even address the leaning in issue, we move down to the feet and we start to address what's going on with the stance, right? So, and that can be as simple as just taking them to a fairly easy trail, a cat track, anything that we can get them to just get their feet hip width apart for most athletes and just roll their skis from edge to edge as they go down and maintain that stance width. So, and we've got to give them a little bit of time to play with that because it's going to feel a little bit different to them. We talk about introducing a new skill and then giving the athlete time to acquire it. And then over years, watching the athlete try to master that skill. So we just have to be very patient when we work on stuff like this so that the athlete becomes comfortable with it in their normal skiing. We can ask them to do a drill one time and they'll do the drill. And we look at that and we go, oh, wow, they got it. That's awesome. And then you watch them ski and it's right back to where they were. So we've really got to give them time to feel the difference and make the adjustment so that it's natural and they don't have to think about it. It's really what we need to do with all.
So Marissa, what do you see in it?
Well, I would totally agree with Jeff. And I think what's interesting is, a bird said, as we were talking about this video last week, said that in the camp environment, widening the stance was really the big goal. And I feel as though as he makes it through these turns, that stance kind of goes from sort of in the middle to getting narrower, right? So it reinforces Jeff's point that all of these muscle memory things that we work on are not, one-hit wonders in our progressions, but they may get an aha moment that has to require a lot of reinforcement. Say he's got a stance, he's feeling like he has a good position, then I think the next thing that I would want to sort of be looking as I moved up, one is sort of, we've talked about equipment. I don't know this athlete, but I would want to check his equipment. I would want to make sure that he can really flex both of those boots well, because I think that kind of gets into what's happening with his shins. You can see that inside ski is shuffled a little bit forward, which sometimes can be a sign of kids who can't fully flex both of their boots.
Daughter is so lovely. How old are Roy's kids?
Please mute your mic.
The next thing that I would look at is that I think that, I would probably want to do a little bit of rotary work with this guy. And I think that there's a lot of different progressions that could look like. Obviously, wedge turns, dynamic wedge turns are a really great way to do that. Kids hate them, so I am often trying to figure out ways that I can pull those movements into a turn in a more effective way. I think that the reason I bring up the wedge is that it would allow us to have him putting that weight early on that outside ski and having a long, strong outside ski. And then we could start to build a progression where there is some rotary movement, but also then he can be starting to work towards that long leg, short leg goal, which when we sort of think about some of the ideal metrics that we're looking at with U14s is a goal for where we would want to go. A progression for doing something like that might be starting out with some wedge turns, breaking them up with a lot of things that are more fun. I like a thumper turn where I kind of modify the wedge and athlete has to really extend that outside leg and kind of slap it into the snow, stomp, stomp, carve around the bottom of the turn. And then from there, trying to take those movements and transitioning them back into skiing. So, now, okay, let's flatten that inside ski so that it's sliding around. Let's go from being in a wedge in the first 3 turns to doing, moving it into parallel, slow parallel, into more dynamic parallel. So doing some things that are keeping a nice, strong outside leg, lots of pressure on that outside ski.
Mr. Mergenthaler, what do you see?
Okay. Well, I can agree with most things that were said already. He's, for starters, if you look at how he's approaching what he's doing, his timing and things are good. So you've got some positives there. I agree the stance could be a little bit wider for this athlete. He's not dynamic. He's gone as far as he can with this position, really. And the set's pretty comfortable for him. So his timing and getting through the course is, he's feeling pretty good about himself. But, to be more dynamic with this athlete, focusing on athleticism, okay, and working more with long leg, short leg, as you guys had identified for this MA. For him, out of skis first, leaning against the wall. What does that feel like? Move the inside foot when you're against the wall, back and forth, and increase the amount of angle that you have so he understands what that angle is. Working with, progressions on the hill where there is some pitch and traversing and understanding where that inside leg has to be shortened. I'll throw some spaghetti at the wall for you. I mean, just having him on a little bit of a pitch in a stationary position on an edge set, launch himself downhill to another edge set so he realizes that he's coming off the uphill ski that was flexed to make the movement. A lot of times you can use terrain. You can use terrain to have the edge of a trail where they ski, where it's safe to go up and over the edge of a trail so that they come up over the top, they're kind of equal in stance, and when they go over the edge, the terrain and the pitch forces that leg to be a little bit shorter, otherwise they're going to be in bad shape. I mean, there's a lot
of a spine type thing, Mergs.
What's that?
Like meaning kind of like a spine type thing, but using sort of natural terrain to form that.
Yeah. Terrain-based stuff is really good. And then as Jeff said, and you said, working with his stance. I mean, he's pretty comfortable. I call that Cadillacing, and he needs to be a little more dynamic by learning how to shorten that leg and get a little more pressure on the outside ski in the fall line and getting more dynamic.
So, Mr. Walker, you mentioned doing some stuff down on a cat track. And what type of time frame would you give yourself as a coach to try to get this athlete to maybe have a little more of a wider stance, more hip width apart with the feet?
Yeah, so I think, if you spend a little bit of time with this athlete until they can sort of demonstrate that they can maintain that stance width, which could be 2 or 3 runs. Maybe it takes longer. but then I would make that drill or that exercise part of that athlete's warm up routine every day, so that the first thing that they do, their first focus on their warm up is to get their stance where it belongs. Then once they have that down, then they can be moving to other things for that day. But that would be something that I would put in their warm up run every day, all season.
All right. I can agree with that. Some of the things I see really good. I do really like his line. He's skiing a better line than a lot of the kids were. But like Steve says, needs to be a little more aggressive.
You know,
Um,
an ultra wide stance for this athlete on the right terrain in a progression where they're just using the knees and ankles and forcing them to stay a little bit maybe lower even with the body, the upper body than you would want at first, so that it would force them to understand that to keep that width of stance, something's got to happen to that inside leg that isn't happening in this video right here.
right. Make it happen without even having to talk about making it happen.
Right. So one of the other things that really emphasizes that long leg, short leg, and get kids to understand how beneficial it is if you get them on a fairly easy terrain and the need to really exaggerate that long leg, short leg. So if their ski is on their left foot and they're making a turn to the right, that right foot that doesn't have the ski on it would get extremely short. And then as they turn to the left, that leg's going to get really long. And they'll find out that it makes one ski skiing pretty easy to do it that way. And hopefully that translates into them understanding that if they do that in their normal skiing, that it's going to make it easier and be stronger for them.
Did people follow that? There, you cut out there for a middle, and I knew what you were talking about because we've talked about this before, but I just want to make sure folks on the Zoom heard that.
Gotcha. So
That's the way I teach one ski skiing, and I think it works really well.
yeah, so the one ski skiing, if the leg that doesn't have the ski on, if that's exaggerated, really exaggerated to be short when it's the inside foot and long when it's the outside foot, it really makes the one ski skiing easier for the athletes and hopefully gets them to understand that if they do that in their regular skiing, they're going to get the same benefit from it. So I think it's a really good exercise. And again, something that they can do, even just once a day, whether it be a little bit with a warm up, pick a partner, they can make a dozen turns and then switch partners so somebody can carry a ski.
So Jeff, when you're saying take that skiless foot, skiless leg, and making it short,
Yep.
right? What are some of the clues, keys that you use? You use bring your knee up, you use bring your toe and your heel up. What are there some codes that you use?
Yep. So I usually invite them to bring their heels up because that's a little bit what we want. That inside foot is going to get shorter, and to keep that ankle tension on that and keep that flexed. If they think about their heel coming up, that helps a bit. And again, every kid kind of takes that differently. So you need to almost find out which work some trigger words that'll work for each athlete. But you can get them to do it just standing before they even start to slide.
Yep.
And sure that inside leg is moving the direction you want it to, and then send them on their way.
So
So give us a
imagine
little.
if you are starting to teach one ski skiing, right? So I work a lot with U12s who, oftentimes need to learn how to ski on one ski and carve across the fall line with just one ski. So as an example, if you are emphasizing that short leg, you might be traversing on the outside ski, the leg that doesn't have a ski on, we refer to it as our flamingo leg. And we start by standing up there and raising our knee up, raising it up, raising it up. and then traversing that way, right? So that you're kind of getting that language down. And then the same thing, right? When they're traversing across the hill and they're on that uphill ski and there's no ski on that outside foot, they're extending it long and strong as if there was a phantom ski there.
We've heard it in the first two MAs too that we did on 10s and 12s. But I mean, dynamic movement is really important. And if there's one thing that brings that out, it's skating, right? Because you got to skate, you got to be on a flex leg to push off the ski and extend to get to the other ski. So I think all these ideas are really great, and there's no one way to skin a cat. We could go down a list of everything that we've talked about already that would be helpful to this athlete and the other two MAs. But I think skating really has to be a really something simple that we can use with anybody, as long as we're skating into the future. And what I mean by that is when we teach kids to skate, first we're breaking it down. We're showing them how to edge the ski and step off it. Maybe we're doing some dynamic movement laterally on flat terrain, back and forth, right? But the big issue I see with skating, and I think I mentioned this maybe last week, is that when the kids skate, they pop up, they don't go forward between the skis with the hips or center of mass. And that's really important. And for this athlete, I think dynamic movement, I mean, like John, like we noticed, he's not bad. I mean, he's Cadillacing this thing pretty well, right? He's not generating a lot of speed. Every now and then he skids a little, but his skis are pretty much tracking. So it's going to take some convincing to him to move out of this position. And we've got to show him that dynamic movement and how much more energy he can get out of a ski would benefit him in the future moving forward into any of his events.
All right. So let's put on number two. We just spent 15 minutes on one. Let's try number two. Good conversation, right? Same thing, Marissa. You play it a few times at regular speed, and then we'll go back down to the slow speed.
Yep. Does everybody see the new skier now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So a couple of things that I would just mention as part of movement analysis as we're thinking about that, right? One is terrain. Terrain's a little different here than it was for the fellow we were looking at before. And that is something that's really common when you're moving to the U14s. They tend to have opportunities to ski on slightly harder terrain. How does that, maybe make problems that they had as younger athletes stand out more? Also things like mindset and fear. How is that factoring into how they're skiing or, the confidence that they're putting into their skiing? So just sort of kind of stuff out there in the ether to think about.
All right. Let's go back to Mr. Walker. What do you see here, sir?
So I see a little bent at the waist. And again, if we look at stance, this is a little bit opposite of what we saw in the first video. So I think this athlete's stance is a little bit wide, which is maybe one of the factors that's causing him to have quite a bit of weight on the inside foot. And not shortening that inside leg with that wide stance leads to that as well. So again, like just starting out with this athlete, going back down to stance and working with him a bit to narrow that stance up and get comfortable with that stance before we move on to anything else.
Marissa, what do you see?
Well, I think one of the things I'd like about this U14 is that, and I think you see it really well when she comes into focus again, is she's looking down the hill. She's looking ahead, and that's not something that you always see with U14 athletes. So I think that's a good check mark for her. I think that right, she's trying to start the turn in the right place, but then she's getting stuck in a slide. So then the question becomes, why is that happening? I think that she's moving inside really early with that hip, and there's not enough rolling of the ski up and activation of the ankle that's happening. So if this were my athlete, I would want to spend some time working on ankles and turn initiation. What does it look like at the start of the turn? Probably what I would do is start with something really flat. I would have them hold their skis right out in front of their poles right out in front of them and have them roll their ankles into the hill. The reason that I would do that with the poles is that I think it keeps both the everything honest for the athlete and the coach. If they're moving in with a hip first, you see it really easily with the poles. And so that can, once we can go, okay, yeah, I see what the movement that I want to make. I really want to make it from the very bottom of my leg with, with that ankle rolling in. Once, we do that, we would do some side sit-ups and edge sets on both sides. There might be a stronger side, a weaker side. So there might be a side that needs a little bit more practice. And then from there, I would start to bring it into skiing, right? Some railroad track turns, some garlands. But, to me, I think that would be something where I'd want to tease that out and see, kind of what does that look like at first in that stationary, because I think that's going to also indicate, is this something that's like a quicker fix, or is this something that we're going to be working on for a lot of the season?
All right. Mr. Aaron Dewey, I believe, is on here from the National Faculty. Aaron, if you could can give me a couple like real positives that you see here.
Hey, John.
Hi, Aaron.
Yeah,
Right
he's got
there.
edging skills, right? I see some good edging skills. Um, he's got a pretty okay turn shape. I'd like to see snow spraying up from the rise line, from the fall line, instead of after the fall line. He's got a lot of pressure after the turn, but that's an easy thing to get him to move that up. Again, that skate to shake to short drill would work really well with this guy. He's already making a move to his new ski. And that is a great progression that you can use, like over a 2-week period to, just to accomplish the exercise. And then, I like what Jeff's talking about, adding that stuff into their warm-up drills when they get out there.
All right. I'm going to pipe in a little bit here. There's a couple things that I see. I really like the fact that this athlete has a pole plan on every turn. Every turn seems to have a pole plan. And when that pole plan happens, there's a pretty good recentering going on. It's at the top of the turn that I'm seeing an issue of moving to the inside too quickly.
Yep.
And leading with the inside ski throughout the turn. If you break it down and stop these frames at the gate, you can see that inside ski is where everything is. I'd like to try to ski. If it was me, I'd be taking right there. Stop that. Can you back that up a couple frames? Just above the red there. Right there. You see the splay of the skis. That athlete's already at that. I'd like to talk about possibly pulling that inside ski back and the tail of that ski up off the ground, and rolling the outside ski. I think that there's some canting might help on this athlete, because it's almost on every turn that you're seeing this leading diverging V. That's just my idea. I like the fact that they're athletes looking down the hill, not afraid to put it there. Just there's some mechanical issues happening in the turn itself. The recentering is in between each gate, like they're in the right spot. All right, let's keep going. So Marissa, come back to me with a couple more drills and progressions.
Let's see. Well, I mean, I think that there is the get over it drill, which is a little bit tricky for U14s, but I think that some of these things where we're getting them onto the new ski, but we're sort of moving to the outside is key, right? There's a lot in there that right, getting stuck inside, and then they're stuck in a lean because they're so far inside. So I think that playing with that could be really fun. A new one that I haven't actually sort of tried yet, but is sort of talking about the wedges is that I saw was where you're finishing the new turn and you jump up onto that new outside ski. So opportunities like that, we're waiting before we're falling inside.
Mr. Walker, can you elaborate a little bit on what you see in a progression, drilling a progression?
Um, Again, I think if we could get this athlete, uh, even to, if we can get him to start with some traverses on the downhill ski with the uphill ski lifted, and as they get ready to start that turn, set that outside ski down and lift the tail of the inside ski as they start to make that turn. I think that's going to help them get off that inside ski a little bit. I think that's maybe where some of the diverging in the skis is coming from a little bit too much weight on that inside ski. So that ski's starting to arc quicker than the outside one. So anything that we can get them to do to make sure that they're starting that turn on the outside ski rather than the inside ski.
Maybe a rise line, painted rise line on the course, on a training course like this. A lot of the turns are actually happening. They're tipping the ski up a little too soon.
Yeah.
He's almost making a double turn.
Yeah. And once they start that too soon, then by the time they realize it, make the correction, it's way too late to maintain that line. So a rise line is a great drill for that sort of double turn move that we see so often, or kids that start to turn and realize, oh, this wasn't a good idea. I didn't wait long enough. And then we watch them drift out past the gate and then hook up and finish the turn with all the pressure below the gate.
I see in the chat a suggestion on an outrigger drill. That would help. So if we're looking at U14s and trying to get a long leg, short leg, and we have two distinctly different videos here, different types of skiers, correct? And we can agree on that. So we got to have different prescriptions for each one of them. But both of them seem to have a lot of inside leg concern. Different, but
I
the
think
same.
you guys were spot on. I mean, and Jeff pointed it out, and I think you did. First thing I saw was that if her ski hooked up and she was doing the right thing, she'd be in the panel. So
Yeah.
early's late, right? The other thing is, if you watch her come over the top, this is a lot of terrain. This is that gore, right, on your pitch.
Yes.
There's a lot of, she comes over, or I don't know if it's a girl or a guy, but they come over very aggressive, and there's some pretty good, there's the best movement in transition happens on that one transition. She's not, nothing is moving forward, and that plays the skis when you're in a little bit in the back seat. And I would start this athlete. I mean, it's an aggressive athlete, right? He or she is really trying hard to ski this thing, and it's toughing it out there below the gate on every turn. I would start this athlete 2 gates up the pitch, and I would work on being clean there and explaining to the athlete, taking some of the progressions you guys have had. Hopefully, you've gotten through. But I wouldn't present this to this athlete at this level until I could see 2 turns first. And then whatever we're going to deal with, whether we're going to deal with stance, whether what pressure on the outside ski, the hip is low on, below the gate, whatever. But I would build confidence through introducing terrain with whatever I was doing with this athlete.
Well, and I think that consistency, Mergs, of that sometimes when we go on these harder terrain, it sometimes makes some of the things that athletes can get away with on a easier terrain become more apparent, right? So, but now it's illustrated it and having to go back in the progression and with all of these starting and mastering it on something easier before you're going to something steeper, whether it's, in the gates or out of the gates.
I think that's
Make them want to attack, make it, it's pretty static skiing, right? So make them want to attack and move. And that pitch with two gates with a start above it, this athlete's mindset might be more a little bit might help with her ability to be more aggressive or more athletic, because she is doing, I mean, he or she is doing some good things, but they're just froze right up after that first gate, right? There's not a lot of movement. Hips are not moving into the turn.
Yeah,
So-
and I think
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
going back to Marissa's point for a minute, we really need to make sure, we all have such a short season and we all have so much information we want to get across to these athletes, but we really need to take the time to allow them to really start to understand the drills that they're doing and the movement patterns that we're trying to create in them. And we sort of can't lose sight of that. And we really need to give them time to really acquire the skill and really start to master it. We can move on to other things, but we need to keep coming back to those things so that they get the opportunity to get better and better at those fundamental things that they may be missing now.
Well said, Jeff. You got to go back sometime. Every weekend, you need to go back and revisit something from the previous week. And, you know, just for the reinforcement value alone, so they don't feel it. But in our weekend programs, and most of us are all weekend programs, they're time constraint, right? How long do you actually have the hill to do it? I mean, pretty amazing that this hill has got no public skiing on this. And if anybody's been to Gore, they know that turnaround time's 20 minutes. So if you set two gates on this and you're going to wait 20 minutes for them to come back around, that's pretty difficult.
You can just
Setting other
activate them with other things up top, John.
Right. And further down as well,
Yeah.
right?
Or segment the trail, right? Like, it may be, a lot of times with progressions that the athletes can't do 6 or 8 link turns and can't do them at speed, but you may be able to say, all right, we're gonna do 2 great turns, and then we're gonna reset and we're gonna do 2 great turns, and now we're gonna do 4, and now we're gonna do 8. And I think we're all in the boat where we have to make the most of every run on the hill because the time is this much and our laundry list is this much.
All right.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, you have so much time, but an old German coach told me one time, he corrected me on some things. He said, you eat bad food and you get used to it, right? So presenting situations where athletes have to survive may be the right thing to do at one point in time. But if we keep polishing movement patterns that are negative to what we really want them to be able to feel, that's what we're going to get. And Jeff's totally right. Just keep working at it, keep it simple, and try to know when to move on without creating that platform of polishing the bad habits.
All right. So I think again, one of the things where, we all have groups where there's individual needs for each athlete, but we still need to work within the group. But I think if you find drills or exercises that are working well for one particular athlete, then the really easy thing to do is just incorporate that into their warm-up runs so that you can almost give all of your athletes different warm-up runs to do based on their needs and then work on the whole group as a whole. But if you give them that time in the morning when they're usually most focused to just work on those fundamental things that are helping their skiing or that they need to improve on, then you've started their training session off in a good way.
I really like
Agreed. All right. So let's open this up. I see a bunch of different things in the chat. I wouldn't mind asking a couple people to elaborate a little bit on what they had to say here. And Sean put a thing, not consistent tongue pressure, and it stacks. Sean, can you elaborate a little bit on that one?
I thought I saw it on both athletes, and it just looks like something that honestly I remember as an athlete when I went to I would imagine it's J3 for them, that transition. You get a little stiffer boot and you kind of bounce. So there's pressure at the initiation, apex, and exit of the turn. And just getting used to letting that be one pressure, I think,
All
is
right,
huge.
so that's really good because we've been talking about boots quite a bit the past couple weeks, right? In the hinge point. In either one of those videos, either video one, stay with me on this, Sean, either video one or video two, would you say that there's a possibility that their equipment might not be the right match for that individual athlete in their flex
Um,
point of their ankles?
at this age, and both of those athletes, I know May. I don't know the other athlete. And for May, I think that was the right boot to have her in, and for that pitch, and for her age, she just needs to get stronger. And part of getting stronger is feeling a stiff boot and what that does. Um, Obviously, she had some difficulties on the pitch there on Echo. And then the other athlete, I think, might have been a bit younger, a year younger. And I think maybe they're in the wrong boot for that year, but the wrong boot for becoming good at being on a strong, a strong forward position. Maybe not. I don't think that's the wrong move.
All right. I can buy all that. Does anybody else? Go ahead.
Someone asked in the chat about progressions in courses versus outside, and I would say that in the main, I want to make sure that the athlete can master it outside of the course before I ask them to correct that in the course. Um, it is, I don't know if, as a coach, like sometimes we forget, right? If we haven't jumped in a course for a while, that's a pretty big ask to be asking them to correct a major technical issue at the same time that they're also have tactical things flying. So, in terms of that progression, being able to make it kind of in free skiing where they have control of their turn shape and their timing and can master the skill before they bring it in the course is usually ideal.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, if we have technical issues, they should be generally worked outside of the course and use the course to work on tactical issues.
Yeah. But some of the drills that we do can be brought into a course setting.
Mm-hmm.
There are some, but not as many as I can't quite say master the drill, but get better at a drill to get better at your skiing. Does anybody have anything they'd like to pop up there? I know the homework said to come up with a drill and a progression. Does somebody have a drill and a progression and a timeline they'd like to share for either video one or video two? Just unmute yourself and talk up.
Just one thing I'd like to jump in about progressions is that we really need to make sure that when we're working on our progressions that they're baby steps, right? That we're giving the athlete an opportunity to progress, but we need to do it in steps that they can learn a little bit at a time, not try and make too big of a jump with our progressions too quickly.
Jeff, would you say that, if you had a progression of 3 steps, that's enough of a progression generally?
I guess I kind of look at it as probably between 3 and 5 steps. And it's gonna a little bit depend on the athlete, like how well they pick it up and how progression is working for them, and then what we're actually trying to correct. Yeah, obviously, if it's something simple, then we can maybe do it in a 3-step progression. If it's something a little more complex or that they need to take a little bit slower so that they really get that movement pattern ingrained, then that may be 5 steps.
Yeah, I think anything less than 3 is not really a progression.
I think often I'll go out with a plan and I'll, maybe it's a 2-hour block and these are the things I'm going to do. And I'll start with the first thing and I'll go, oh, wow. I had really grand plans, but they're not able to grasp this first thing and realizing that I have to back up farther than I wanted to. And when you're on the hill and you're trying to accomplish so much and you have this grand plan, and then you realize you have to go back farther, sometimes it feels like, but that's always time well spent.
Absolutely. No doubt. And
And
there's other
part of, go ahead.
like your progression that you may have the perfect plan for the day and the snow conditions just don't work out for you. So don't be afraid to adapt, as we have to do all the time in ski racing. Adapt your progression, adapt your terrain so that it works to produce what you're looking for. Don't get stuck saying, I'm going to do this here, and that's the only place I'm going to do it. If it's not working, maybe it's the terrain, maybe it's the athlete, but try it in 2 or 3 different terrains or sections and see if it makes a difference for you there, and you start to see the results that you want. Then you can move it to different terrain.
Awesome. Awesome. A little comment from Mike here on the second video, adding a brush on the drop line to where to finish the turn. That does work really well.
Yeah.
Really well. I wasn't so, in my opinion, I wasn't so concerned on where they were finishing, but I thought the entrance to the turns were too soon, and that was causing him issues throughout the turn. I'd like to address the top of the turn more than the bottom of the turn. That's just the way I look at it.
So you're saying put a brush above the gate,
Or a painted line. Yeah, a rise line.
not below the gate.
Well, the below the gate works once the athlete is putting the turn in the right spot. Right.
Right.
Now,
I agree.
now you want to tighten.
I would say
when you
above the
put,
gate is the best place for it for that athlete.
yeah, below the gate, I look at it as trying to get a tighter arc. So a little more advanced skill at that. Whereas above the gate with a brush or a rise line teaches the athlete how to possibly get a little deeper in the turn before they tip their ski up, so they don't run into the panel. They don't double turn.
That might make that athlete reach a little more with that outside leg, regardless of where she is in the balance point on it. And then there might be a light bulb that goes off,
But put in that drop line, tight, that helps tighten up the arc for absolute certain. The only real other concern with that is sometimes they get a little too loopy. And the same thing with the die line. They make it too loopy, and then you need to tighten that arc up as well. All right, so Andrew Lincoln's got something here. Andrew, you want to talk through this? Unmute yourself. Maybe not. So he's talking on skier 1, a progression, railroad tracks, hands on the knees, roll the ankles. Kind of similar to what you were talking about, Jeff. Inside thumper turns. And then J turns to emphasize the hip and the hill. And then I guess my only other question is, how do you bring that into regular skiing? Crickets.
Well, I mean, I think you could definitely adapt that progression into regular skiing, especially with the inside ski thumper turns, right? that could be starting out 2 or 3 turns, moving into more dynamic parallel. J turn's probably a little bit trickier, but is certainly, has a time and a place for helping kids, get those aha moments.
Anybody else, or
Yeah,
we're gonna take
John,
Yeah, yeah.
I got just to
Hi,
just
Mitch.
hi. Marissa had a really good point, and I'm gonna reiterate it and kind of take that and run with it. And for both athletes in those videos, I'd go back to stance and making sure that they can flex the ankle, and I'd work on that repeatedly until they can start to feel that, and then I would then progress into some railroad track turns, so that then they can flex the ankle and then roll the foot and ankle so the skis start tracking. And I would then progress into those athletes, both of them, both into a traverse where they're both, lifting the uphill ski and the downhill ski in traverses. And then once they start to get that feeling, then I would then continue on with some free skiing at that point and making sure that they've still got the stance and they've got the right proper spacing between their skis. And then from there, I think some javelin turns would be kind of the magic to kind of get them connected with their upper and lower body and make sure there's a little separation.
Wow.
Thank you. Carl McGuire says you have a progression for skier 1.
Yeah. So I know this athlete. His name is Andrew. When you guys were saying he's like a Cadillac skier, I was dying laughing because we call him the Sunday stroller. He just doesn't seem to want to be aggressive ever. So one thing that I worked on with him at one point that helped him a lot was like we started the day with skate races. And not doing like the whole team at once, like 2v2s or 1v1s. And then our progression, we moved into like making a brush course on flat ground, flat terrain, like almost like 2 parallel courses. So then the athletes could race each other and do kind of skate to shape at the same time. And then finishing out that progression, you could set like a little 5 gate course and have them just start, focus on that skate to shape that they've been working on all day, and then kind of have it go down steeper terrain and have them finish out that feeling the ankle flexion and running on that. I don't know, getting them more aggressive was kind of my idea.
A big point that Marissa made, have a plan, and then Jeff's right, have that plan ready to be able to be modified. And remember too that all these progressions you guys are talking about are fantastic and everything that's been on here, but you can use those progressions for a variety of different skill development. You need to target what you're working with the development in that progression. But don't think that, one progression is only going to do one thing. It can be used for many things.
All righty. Well, I would like to thank everybody for attending tonight. I hope you got something out of this. I know I did. Marissa, great job on running the videos. There's keeping them playing so everybody could see them while the panel was talking was awesome. I think we might have figured out a way to run video in a Zoom and not have it buffer all day long. So that we'll move on to the U16.
My lousy internet. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I think we'll move. We'll take that what we learned and move it to the U16s for next weekend. We hope to have some homework out for the U16 video towards the end of this week, and don't forget to self-report yourself, folks. Would anybody like to make a motion for adjournment? All right, Mitch, I like that.
Second.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Bye.